morning and welcome back to my channel. My name is Amelia and I will be doing another wrap up. It has been a month already and I don't know how I feel about that. So in the month of February 2019 I read 5 books, of which I only have 4 on me currently because one of them I was borrowing and had to obviously give back. So let's go through these books. I will share with you what I read. So first I finished Augustus. I'll put an image up here to show you what the cover looks like. First I finished Augustus. Augustus was an autobiography of Augustus, the first Emperor of Rome. And overall I think that the book was informative, it contained the information you would expect it to contain, covered his entire life, not quite from birth, but it covered who he was, and we didn't get any fun and interesting stories about his childhood as I had perhaps hoped, but we did get a pretty solid view of who he was and some good information on his marriage laws and the presentation of his image, which is what my class civ course is about, so that was helpful. The second book I read of the month was SPQR by Wyrd. This is one of the best non-fiction books that I've ever read, so I'm going to start off about with that. Very interesting, covers all the key points in Roman history, just amazing, brilliant, 10 out of 10, 5 stars. I don't actually know if I rated it 5 stars, I might have rated it 4 stars. But yes, it was very easy to read. I was worried that it would be confusing once I got to the Empress because she does tend to jump around time-wise. And I thought, oh, I haven't studied all of the emperors yet, I've only studied Augustus, maybe I'll get confused and I'll be able to know if the first bit, Late Roman Republic, is confusing for everyone else. But I read it and I was pleasantly surprised to find that I wasn't confused at all. So even if you haven't studied class civ, this is probably going to be fine to read, even if she does obviously jump around the timeline a little bit. She starts with Cicero and then jumps back to the kings of Rome. A note, the kings and the emperors are not the same. The kings came before the Republic, the emperors came after the Republic. The third book I read of February 2019 was Wyrd Sisters by Pratchett, which is the 6th Discworld novel. I read it, of course, for the same reason I read Men at Arms last month, to listen to the podcast Pratchat in the sequence that they do their episodes. I think this is my favourite Discworld book so far. I really love the characters, I really love the story, just everyone was so interesting, it was super engaging, and obviously, like, I enjoyed it. I think it's definitely my favourite Discworld novel so far. I'm not entirely sure if it's my favourite Terry Pratchett novel of all time, but we shall have to see. This is probably going to be kept close to my heart for quite a while. So another book which I read earlier and forgot to mention is an e-book that I had, The Little Book of Hygge, I believe it is pronounced. I despise this. Honestly, it was consumerist, it wasn't very inclusive, it just seemed like a cash grab, it wasn't helpful at all. I was reading it during a period of severe deep depression and literally this was not any help at all whatsoever to me. I found it just boring, repetitive. The writer covers the same points over and over again and it's just so annoying to read. And the fact that like every once in a while there are a couple of statistics just popped in there for effect just doesn't help. What helped me more than this was literally watching TV, which is not apparently a very good action when you do it alone, but oh boy, it made me happy. So, I don't know, personally I feel like there are other better reasons why people in Denmark are happy. The writer even stated it in like the first chapter that it's because they have free healthcare and good benefits and all of that, the welfare system, and I thought, yeah, that makes sense, why are we here now? So yeah, I don't think this is, I think that this is just one of those trends that comes and goes, those lifestyle trends, and it's just not, I don't think it's very solid, personally. The final book I read in February was Siege and Storm, which I vlogged, and I will put a link to that vlog when it's up. But I gave this 3 stars. I didn't hate it, but I didn't really like it. Personally, I feel like this is a very weak book. The prose, obviously, as always with Leigh Bardugo, is gorgeous, amazing, prettiest set of words I've ever seen in a sentence. The story, on the other hand, is severely lacking. The character relationships are boring, and I just didn't like a lot of the characters. There were only really 2 characters that I enjoyed reading about, and that was Zhenya and Nikolai. And they don't get enough of the spotlight for me to think this is worth reading, but hopefully that means I will absolutely adore King of Scars when I get round to it. Hopefully Ruin and Rising will be better. The main reason I didn't like this was because it was literally just 200 pages of relationship drama in the middle, and I feel like there were some plot threads that Leigh Bardugo could have gone with that would have been much more interesting than what she chose to go with, so ultimately this was a disappointment. I enjoyed Shadow and Bone. I didn't think Shadow and Bone was that bad. This one, however, it just fell short for me. So at the end of the month, obviously that wasn't as much of a productive month as last month where I read 8 books, but I'm hoping to bring that up in March. I originally told myself, oh, it's just because February is a shorter month, but then I realised the books that I was reading in January were much longer than the books I was reading in February, so I really just am in a slump right now. So currently in progress are a few longer books. I have Pyramids, which is the next for Pratchat to read, and I am loving it so far. I am on page 100, and I really like the main character, I really like the premise. I just feel like this is going to be a very interesting read. I also like how for the first time in the Discworld we're really exploring a character's afterlife, and it's just so interesting because if you don't know, in the Discworld when you die you go to whatever you essentially believe the afterlife is. So you get to choose, and this covers obviously the Egyptian view of the afterlife, or the fantasy Egyptian view of the afterlife. And it is, like, it's really interesting to read about, honestly. Yeah, it's a good book. I'm also midway through, well, not midway, I'm actually pretty close to finishing, because half of this is index, but I'm also nearly finished with The Unfinished Tales. I've been enjoying it so far. My favourite part, I don't think anything is going to top my favourite bit, but my favourite bit is Aldarion and Arendis, the Mariner's wife, because it is so interesting to read about these 2 characters who marry each other basically just because they think the other is pretty. Their interests do not align with each other at all, and yeah. And it basically explores how badly their relationship goes, and meanwhile the threat is building of Sauron elsewhere. And yeah, it's just, they're a disaster. They're so bad for each other. But yeah, I found that so entertaining. Nothing will top it, I don't think. So in the month of February 2019, I watched the 2nd season of The Dragon Prince, which I have some thoughts about. First of all, I'm not happy, spoilers by the way, I'll put an image up on the screen until I finish talking about spoilers. I'm not happy with the way they handled the LGBT representation. Personally, I've not been super open about this, but I am a lesbian, and the way that they handled the FF romance, I didn't like it at all. Like, I appreciated these characters were included, I appreciated that they were given an honourable death, and I appreciated that they were allowed to have a daughter. The problem I find is they were disposable characters. These characters were created to be killed off for the progression of the story, and they really didn't need to have been made lesbians. They could have made these characters heterosexual with minimal perpetuation of nasty tropes. And I love the series. I still love the series. I'm still going to watch season 3, obviously, but I didn't like that aspect of it. It felt insensitive, and I know they talked about how they discussed it and how there's going to be more representation later on. I really hope there is. It just doesn't sit right with me that the 3 characters that died during that sequence were women of colour, and possibly all 3 of them LGBT as well. Of course, obviously, the narrator to that sequence, if you've watched the series, you know, is biased. Like, very heavily biased and unreliable, so possibly the characters are alive, we do not know. Personally, I don't want to guess at the theories, like, I don't want to give it a guess yet, but it would be nice. It would be nice if they were alive, but also I feel like that's not what's going to happen. As for other aspects of that series, I really enjoyed it. I still, like, obviously I still love the series. LGBT politics aside, it's a great series, so diverse, so many amazing characters. Last time I talked about it at the end of January, I talked about how there is a canon LGBT character in the show already who's supposedly not dead, but we'll have to see. It's like a very complicated series. Like, it's all mostly theory, but theory that is heavily supported by the crew. So we'll see. As for other series I watched, Tidying Up with Marie Kondo, obviously love it still. I haven't finished it because I don't get the time, but I won't talk about that. I'm also on the second to last episode of Merlin, season 2. I've been catching up on Merlin just because it's my guilty pleasure TV show. I really love it. Guinevere and Morgana are my favourite characters, and yeah, I feel really bad for Morgana. As for podcasts, I've been listening to The Witch Wave, and I just love The Witch Wave so much. It's so interesting to me to listen to these experiences of other witches and people who've worked with witches. I think my favourite episode so far is the one about, oh god, I can't remember her name, but she runs November Sage Apothecary. Like, her episode where she's interviewed was amazing. It was brilliant. I loved learning about it, and the discussions about cultural appropriation was so important to be having. I just think, like, it's good content. I've also been listening to Pratchat, obviously, and I'm going to start Let's Talk About Myths Baby because my friend recommended it to me months ago. I couldn't find it on Spotify, but now I listen to podcasts on Castbox, so I'm going to listen to it, and it's going to be great. And they've just started covering the Odyssey, which is what I'm studying. But yeah, as for my writing, because I just remembered that I need to talk about that too, I've got a video planned for that. I will be talking about that in more detail. My current fantasy series, I have written a prologue. I know, the cardinal sin. It's necessary though. I've written a prologue and I have begun the first chapter. However, the plot is still a bit iffy in my mind, so I'm going to have to go and work out some of the kinks with that, and then I will be able to talk to you guys about it, which I'm super excited about because I'm so happy to be writing this series at last. It's not a series. It's a world in which I plan to write a series of standalone novels, all set in the same world. And it's going to cover, like, a sci-fi fantasy aspect, there's going to be an adventure aspect, there's going to be romance, lots and lots of romance and mythology and things like that, all within this universe, and I'm very excited to explore it along with you guys. So yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. I will be back soon with, obviously, fantasy series, vlog, and some other things, some other goodies that I need to get to eventually. And yeah.